Hey guys, today we're going to talk about a very important topic. It answers the question, what is a trust? You know, I find myself in conversations every day to share with people how to avoid probate. And then the answer is, well, to have a trust. Then the next question is, well, what is a trust? So we're going to talk about that today. And to help me, I have my friend Phil here, who also has some experience with estate planning and trust. Say hi to all our friends.
Glad to be here with you, Randy. Thank you.
All right, good. Well, thanks for coming. I really need your help. So, I have my trust here. Everyone can see it. You can see this particular trust is the Fifth Amendment and restatement of the RHM Living Trust dated July 20, 2005.
The Fifth Amendment?
Fifth Amendment.
Wow.
Yeah.
You have a lucky trust attorney. They're doing a lot of work for you. Why 5 amendments?
Great question. I'm glad you asked. Well, Phil, in life, things change. Okay, we get married. Sometimes separations happen. Mm-hmm. We have kids, and the kids grow up, and sometimes we even have start families later in life.
That makes sense. So life changes affect what you want to do with your estate, and you make adjustments to the trust accordingly.
Exactly. Okay. So, I got married last year,
Right.
My beautiful wife, Lily. So I had to call my attorney, Jeff, and say, hey, it's time to update the trust. And unfortunately, a lot of people set out to do all the right things. They get a trust in place. Mm-hmm. And over time, they don't update it, and it could cause some challenges.
Oh, it really does, especially in real estate business. Right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
This is impressive. We, in the title industry, we get people that'll come into our office with their trust, and it's like 2 pieces of paper with a coffee stain, stapled together 7 times, and a paper clip, and notes taken on the back. That's neat. That's like a binder. Did I see it? Was there a table of contents?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Thanks, Phil. So, this is a table of contents, and you can see a table of contents with, this one has 10 parts. And some of these parts include, number 1, the trust agreement. There's also a last will and testament, which we're going to talk about a little more in detail. Assignment of personal property, a durable power of attorney for asset management, and also for healthcare decisions. And then there's some other health care items, and also nomination of a guardian.
How did you know, like when you were putting your trust together, how did you know to put that stuff in it?
I had no idea. I don't know any of this. I trust my great attorney to put all of this together.
You didn't do it. You went to a professional who did that for you.
Phil, in life, look, there's some things that are really important. There's some things you could do off-brand, generic.
Right.
There's some things that are really important. I'll give you an example. I had LASIK eye surgery a couple years ago. When I was preparing to do that, I didn't look for the cheapest doctor.
You find the best thing I
wanted the best because this is something that's important, and what we're talking about today is very important.
It sure is. Let me share really quickly that oftentimes with that 3-page coffee stain stapled together trust agreement, the heirs of the deceased end up having to go back to an attorney and sometimes spending more money than if it would have been done right the first time around.
You're absolutely right. There's a lot of consequences for not making sure that this is done in the absolute highest level of integrity possible.
Right. Not even just an attorney, right? Attorneys that specialize in this kind of work.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm so glad you brought that up because there are some attorneys, they may focus on family law or criminal law and just do estate planning kind of on the side.
Right.
For me, and what I recommend for anyone, if you're gonna do something like this, find someone who specializes in protecting families and that this is their primary source of practice.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. So I mentioned that we need to update it. And, for example, my daughter had a daughter. Well, now my granddaughter is 4 years old.
Nice.
It's not only my immediate family, but other generations who I want to include and maybe who I need to exclude.
Right, because you may have adult children, you do have adult children.
I do.
And then you may have, at some point, you may have young children again. And then you would have children that could create conflict if you're not really specific with your trust. Hey, so in Las Vegas especially, I think, I have a trust. My wife and I prepared a trust 4 or 5 years ago, and the primary focus of the trust wasn't our immense wealth, because there isn't immense wealth. It was our 2 children. And one of the considerations with leaving things to our children was, who are they going to be at the time that they might receive this money? And in Las Vegas, with access to a lot of inappropriate, sometimes addictive things, My wife and I in our trust, we were strategic about when our children would get certain assets because we didn't want to put a ton of money in the hands of a young person that has addictive issues. It would help ruin them.
And I'm sure we all have stories, not only us here making this video, but our friends at home, that we all maybe have friends, family who have been through some tough lifestyle situations.
Right.
Meaning here in Las Vegas, you mentioned addiction, gambling,
Yeah.
drugs, alcohol,
Right.
where someone could, if they don't have things properly set up, that the inheritance could be blown in 6 months. And that's certainly not, I think, the plan of for any of us.
Right.
Would you
Well,
agree?
yeah, because I think, especially as parents, we want to leave things to our children to help them improve their lives. We don't want to help them ruin their lives. So to give a ton
Absolutely.
of money to a 22-year-old who hasn't figured things out in life yet could be really dangerous.
Exactly.
So when you're talking about the trust and we talked about assets, what kind of personal assets would one put in? What do you have in your trust?
So everything, meaning real estate, that includes houses, land, maybe commercial real estate. What I find a lot of people leave out and forget to put in the trust, meaning fund the trust, are bank accounts and stock accounts. I actually had sold a house a few months ago, a lady. I called her, she called me on a Saturday, and I said, what are you doing? She said, I'm at the bank because I'm going to make a new account for the trust because the house was in a trust, so those funds need to go to an account held by the trust. I said, whoa, whoa, whoa. All you have to do is give this document to the teller at the bank, and this is just what's called a certificate of revocable trust. Give this to them. Whatever bank accounts you have will now can be held by the trust. You don't have to make a new account. Now, what's ironic on this particular case is that this lady, her sons are both estate planning and probate attorneys, so there must have been some miscommunication.
Oh, yeah.
Fortunately, she's going to get everything in the right place, and it'll be held by the trust moving
And
forward.
that's exactly what my wife and I did with our bank accounts when we established our trust. Took a copy of the trust. We didn't open new accounts. They just added the trust into the account.
Beautiful.
Right? And something else, Randy, that's probably worth mentioning, beneficiaries of like life insurance. That should probably also be the trust, so that the trust can handle the distribution of those funds so that they don't go directly to whoever the beneficiary is. So
You're
for
absolutely
instance,
right.
in my life insurance policies, my trust is the beneficiary, not my children. Now, my children are the beneficiaries in my trust, but through my trust, I can control that money that they may get, and again, provide it to them in a way that may be a little bit more appropriate than one big lump sum.
Well, it sounds like you're doing all the right things. So
I
I'm glad,
try.
I'm glad you're here.
Oh, I've had a lot of experience watching families really struggle with things having been done improperly, right? And trying to get real estate closed at a time, especially when they're already grieving over the loss of a loved one, and now they're running into roadblocks because the trust was one of those 3-page coffee stains stapled together things that they got at the Nevada legal form store or something like that.
Thanks for sharing, and hopefully we can help some folks out there avoid all of that.
Randy, you mentioned that real estate's one of the things that individuals would want to have held in their trust. Just by saying in the trust that the properties are held in trust, does that make it so? Do we have to do anything else to effectuate that?
Right, and that's unfortunately a mistake that I see a lot. So any real estate needs to be deeded into the trust
Yes.
so that the trust is the owner of the asset.
Right. So if the trust says the trust is the owner of the real estate, but the record title says that it's the individual's, the property in fact is not in trust.
It's not held in trust, or what we call funding the trust. So in that case, and I'm telling you, I see it happen, I don't know, probably just myself, I see it happen 5-6 times a year where somebody did all the right things, had a trust, but did not do what we call fund the trust,
Right.
meaning have the assets held by the trust.
I see it a lot too, it's why I asked the question.
All right, well, thanks for asking that.
Randy, earlier when we were looking at the table of contents, one of the things that you mentioned was a part of your trust agreement was the last will and testament. I think those folks would want to know, why a trust if you already have a last will and testament? If you went to an attorney to get like a formal will, why all the other crap?
Great question, Phil. I'm glad you asked. So a last will and testament is part of a trust. Just having a last will and testament is good. It's better than not having anything. However, just having a will not incorporated into the trust is what we know is just instructions for a judge going through probate. So here let me.
They call that dying intestate, right?
That is correct.
Right.
That is correct. So why don't we just read a couple components here?
Okay.
And this is also, we talked earlier about updating the trust, and this is an important part. So here we have marriage and family. So we see my wife Lily is in here, my daughter Nicole, and my son Gavin. We also added my granddaughter Bella to this last will and testament. So everybody that I want included.
So Bella
is right
was
in
one
here.
of the 5 amendments, I'm guessing.
That
Okay.
right, yeah. So during that time in the last couple of years, that was something.
We'll call that the Bella Amendment.
Yeah, someone we wanted to include. So let's dig a little bit deeper. Not only including the people we want included in the last will and testament, but also includes, you see here, personal and household effects. Okay. And for me, look, I'm not a very materialistic guy. I like to invest and buy things, and we travel. I don't have a lot of things to pass on. But something that I really wanted to talk about and dig a little deeper today is what people think does have value, and that has to do with personal property. You know, as we're talking about the last will and testament and personal property, I really want to talk a little more about what I found people believe has a lot of value that unfortunately doesn't have a lot of value, and that has to do with someone's collections.
Okay. I'm thinking Pawn Stars. We see a lot of people show up with like something, grandpa's something that they found in the basement, and they want to know how much money it's worth, and most of the time it's not.
So, Phil, can I tell you the truth?
Yes.
Have your permission?
Yes.
All right. Most people don't give a shit about all those collections, about grandmas, that someone's held on to for 30 or 40 years.
Right.
And I know, look, we all have in our family, grandma, grandpa. I know personally a Coca-Cola collection that maybe someone has spent a lifetime working on, right? 30, 40 years. Every Coca-Cola, anything that was ever made, that takes up 2 rooms, takes up most of the entire house and even the garage. But and that's nice to enjoy it for a time. What I found though is when someone passes, nobody wants to deal with that.
There's no
stuff.
other Coca-Cola fan that wants all that stuff in their house. Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
and I see
really
this.
interesting. My father passed away several years ago, and then my mother, we just recently moved her from the big house that they lived in into a more reasonable place that wasn't so big and not 2 stories and all that, and there were collections that were going to be sold to help my mother, have a little bit more money. And there was one of the collections that my father had, and it was a collection of cowboy figurines. And these figurines have been around my family as long as like some of the kids have been around the family. A lot of them had names. We called them by those names. They were displayed in the house, and we toasted to them sometimes in the holidays. Some of these figurines were like part of the family. So we thought, well, this is going to bring a lot of money to my mother. We're going to sell the cowboy figurines. They weren't super cheap. They weren't super expensive. It wasn't Yadro or something like that. But we thought that we were probably going to get maybe $2,000 to $5,000 for the cowboy figurines for a mom. There were quite a few of them, and I think my dad paid a reasonable amount for them. No, nobody wanted the damn
Nobody wanted them.
You know where the cowboys
Yeah.
are? They're in my living room.
Right.
Because I just couldn't see them. They don't have any value to me other than the sentimental value that they were my father's, and I've known Slim since I was 10 years old,
Right.
the tall, skinny cowboy guy. But nobody wanted them.
Right, and I hear that a lot. And look, there are a lot of items that people collect over time, and some of these items could be expensive to purchase. I'll give you an example. So Swarovski crystals, and some of these they're beautiful. I was in Austria 20-something years ago, went to the manufacturing plant, and they're really amazing looking pieces, and a lot of people will collect these over decades even. However, when it comes time, families coming through after someone has passed away, a lot of people, especially coming in from out of state, they're just not going to want to deal with it. I found that recently. I have a couple of probate files that I've been helping the families kind of navigate through the personal items, is that most people don't want them. They're out of state, not even just out of state, but across the country, Texas, New York, and at some point, people just want to move forward with their lives.
So what do we do with that stuff? If you're advising me and my wife, and we're sitting there in my my folks' house and there's collections, what do we do with those things?
That-
If we're not gonna sell
So,
them?
yes, my advice, and there's a couple ways to go about this. I encourage people, look, whoever had that collection, enjoyed them for a long, long time, sell them now. And in that case, you could take the money, use the money, go, if there's enough to go travel or spend on the grandkids, but go ahead and start either selling or giving those items away now. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay, great. So look, guys, I'm letting you know now, if grandpa has these collections, and they're, maybe sitting in a closet collecting dust, go ahead and help them to sell them now, or even donate so someone else can now enjoy them. Okay, good. So I think we got that, because look, otherwise they're going to end up in the trash or be sold by an estate sale for pennies on the dollar. So Phil, back to the trust. And it doesn't matter if someone has a $1 million house or maybe just some money in a bank account. It's so important with all of these pieces of what a trust is to tell all of our friends, family out there in the community, go get a trust.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think this is worth mentioning. One of the consequences of not having a trust, let's say you or I don't do a trust and we don't have a plan for what's going to happen with our assets to the next generation. They're going to have to figure it out amongst themselves, and that doesn't look very pretty often.
You're right.
It tends to create contention amongst people that you want to love each other, and that's not a neat thing. You don't want to be the vehicle of contention of the people you love. You're just trying to provide for them. So having proper estate planning documents like a trust and the last will and testament and the other things that were in your table of contents there are so important to keep your family close at a time when they're, I would hope, grieving at the loss of a loved one. They don't need the added stress of financial issues on top of the already devastating emotional issue.
Absolutely. Yeah, so it could create even more of a burden to have to deal with all these personal items, and instead of just being able to move to the next season of life. So, well, there you have it, guys. Please share your thoughts and questions in the comments below. Call me with anything in the world that I can help you with. See you on the next video.